was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties.
Senator Rand Paul opened his remarks with a powerful reminder of how America's freedoms were tested in the years following September 11th. He noted that while organizations like CARE emerged in response to that era, the deeper issue today is how some public figures, like Representative Ilhan Omar, continue to portray America as an oppressor rather than a beacon of liberty. Paul argued that the true greatness of the United States doesn't lie in perfection, but in its enduring commitment to liberty through the Constitution, a document that protects rights millions across the world can only imagine. That, he explained, was a dividing line between his vision and Omar's. She focused on America's faults, while he emphasized the values that make it exceptional. Drawing from personal experience, Paul shared stories of refugees in his own community, men and women from Somalia, Bosnia, and Eastern Europe, who had fled war, tyranny, and persecution. He described how these individuals expressed deep gratitude for the opportunities they found in the U.S. To him, their appreciation was living proof of America's generosity and strength, a country that welcomes those who come with hope, courage, and respect for freedom. Their experiences, Paul said, stood in sharp contrast to the criticism he so often hears from Omar.
I'm in a town where we have a lot of people who are refugees who have come, some from Somalia, some from Bosnia. I've never heard one of them say that America's a terrible place or be unappreciative of our country. Most of them are thankful. I've met people who've come here from behind the Iron Curtain that got away from communism. They're some of the best Americans we have because they really appreciate how great our country is. And then I hear Representative Omar say, "Oh, America's a terrible place. I'd love to be justice, and there's no justice here." It's like, well, she came here and we fed her, we clothed her, she got welfare, she got school, she got health care. And then, lo and behold, she has the honor of actually winning a seat in Congress, and she says we're a terrible country. I think that's about as ungrateful as you can get. And so while I'm not saying we forcibly send her anywhere, I'm willing to contribute to buy her a ticket to go visit Somalia. And I think she could look and maybe learn a little bit about the disaster that is Somalia, that has no capitalism, has no God-given rights guaranteed in a constitution, and has about 7 different tribes that have been fighting each other for the last 40 years. And then maybe after she's visited Somalia for a while, she might come back and appreciate America more.
Georgia seek recognition.
Continuing his argument, Paul highlighted what he saw as a troubling lack of appreciation in Omar's rhetoric. He pointed out that she had benefited from the very institution she often criticizes, America's education system, its social safety nets, its health care programs, and even the chance to serve in Congress. For Paul, these weren't minor advantages, but powerful symbols of what America makes possible for immigrants and refugees. He argued that Omar's choice to depict the country as unjust wasn't simply a policy disagreement. It was a question of respect and perspective. Should someone who has gained so much through American freedom constantly portray it as broken? To drive his point home, Paul suggested that Omar visit Somalia to see the difference firsthand. Somalia, he explained, has no constitutional protection for rights, no economic system that creates opportunity, and has suffered years of tribal conflict. By comparing Somalia's instability to America's structural liberty, he believed she might better appreciate what makes her adopted home unique. He clarified that his suggestion wasn't about exclusion. It was an invitation for perspective, a reminder of how rare and valuable America's freedoms truly are.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 2A.1 of Rule 9, I seek recognition to give notice of my intent to raise a question of the privileges of the House. The form of the resolution is as follows.
Recognized.
Censuring Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. Whereas elected members of Congress take an oath to bear true faith and allegiance to the United States without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. Whereas Representative Ilhan Omar took an oath of allegiance to the United States upon becoming a citizen, declaring, "I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen."
At one point in the proceedings, Paul quoted the solemn words of the American Oath of Allegiance, "I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty." The debate soon moved to the House floor, where lawmakers read a formal resolution calling for Ilhan Omar to be censured. The document accused her of making statements during a Minneapolis event that appeared to prioritize Somalia's interests over America's. It cited her claim that U.S. actions would depend on the influence of Somali Americans. A remark critics said revealed divided loyalties. The resolution argued that such comments violated her oath of office, which binds every member of Congress to uphold the U.S. Constitution alone. It even referenced George Washington's 1796 farewell address, where he warned against divided loyalties and false patriotism. By invoking that history, Omar's critics framed her words as more than controversial. They saw them as fundamentally inconsistent with the spirit of American public service.
Whereas on January 27, 2024, Representative Omar gave remarks at an event in Minneapolis in which she made treasonous statements. Whereas Representative Omar said she has spoken to many Somalians who asked her to intercede for the Somali government by pressuring the United States government into certain actions. Whereas Representative Omar assured the Somalians she spoke to, the U.S. government will only do what Somalians in the U.S. tell them to do. They will do what we want and nothing else. They must follow our orders, and that is how we will safeguard the interest of Somalia. Whereas Representative Omar continued, "For as long as I am in U.S. Congress, Somalia will never be in danger. Its waters will not be stolen by Ethiopia or others. Sleep in comfort knowing I am here to protect the interest of Somalia from inside the U.S. system."
Supporters of the resolution went further, alleging that Omar's remarks reflected what they called conflicted loyalties. They claimed that promoting the interests of a foreign nation while serving as a U.S. lawmaker raised serious questions about her fitness to hold key positions in Congress. As a result, they proposed removing her from the Budget Committee and the Education and Workforce Committee, two influential panels that shaped national priorities. The tension between Paul and Omar quickly evolved beyond personal disagreement. It became a defining symbol of America's growing political divide. For Paul's supporters, his stance was about patriotism, the belief that gratitude and respect for opportunity must anchor public service. Omar's defenders, however, viewed her words as part of legitimate criticism, a right protected by the same Constitution Paul defended. This clash sparked a broader national question. When does criticism of one's country cross the line from accountability into disloyalty? The debate revealed how thin and contested that line has become in modern American politics.
Whereas George Washington warned in his farewell address of 1796 to guard against the impostures of pretended patriotism, and further declared citizens by birth or choice of a common country, that country has a right to concentrate your affections. The name of American, which belongs to you in your national capacity, must always exalt the just pride of patriotism more than any appellation derived from local discriminations.
What made Rand Paul's response resonate was his ability to separate Omar's identity from her ideas. He focused not on who she was, but on the worldview she expressed, one he believed clashed with America's founding principles. That distinction, Paul explained, was crucial. It allowed the discussion to center on philosophy and policy rather than personal background. By grounding his arguments in facts, logic, and constitutional ideals, Paul presented himself as a defender of principle rather than personality. In doing so, he appealed to many Americans weary of debates driven by identity politics or emotion. Ultimately, Paul framed the exchange as a choice between two competing visions for America, one that values unity, liberty, and respect for the Constitution, and another that emphasizes grievance and division. His closing message was clear. The nation's future depends on leaders who defend freedom unapologetically and who refuse to weaken America's foundations through constant criticism. For many of his supporters, Paul's words struck a chord. Patriotism, they argued, isn't about ignoring flaws but recognizing America's rare, an essential role in the world, and safeguarding it from ideologies that seek to diminish it.
Whereas these statements by Representative Omar clearly violate the oath she took as an elected member of Congress to defend and protect the United States Constitution. Whereas Representative Omar has exhibited the treasonous tendencies George Washington warned about, and her actions must be condemned by all members of Congress who adhere to the oath they took upon assuming office. And whereas by openly admitting her efforts to advance Somalia's interest using her position as a United States representative, Representative Omar has revealed herself to be a foreign agent.
After Paul's remarks, many Americans viewed his speech as a reminder to reflect on gratitude and freedom. He drew a sharp line between constructive criticism and a constant narrative of condemnation. Yes, he said, the U.S. has its problems, but it remains one of the few nations where individuals can rise from poverty, chase opportunity, and even reach Congress itself. Paul's criticism of Omar stemmed from his belief that leaders should celebrate America's strengths while working to solve its challenges, not define it by its shortcomings. Meanwhile, the resolution to censure Omar ignited immediate controversy. Some lawmakers argued that punishing her would set a dangerous precedent for free speech within Congress. Others insisted her comments had crossed a boundary, implying allegiance to another country over the United States. The dispute exposed how fragile the balance between free expression and accountability has become in the political arena.
On behalf of a foreign government. Now therefore be it resolved that Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota be censured. Representative Ilhan Omar forthwith present herself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure. Representative Ilhan Omar be censured with the public reading of this resolution by the Speaker, and Representative Ilhan Omar be and is hereby removed from the Committee of the Budget and the Committee on Education and the Workforce.
This controversy led to a deeper constitutional question. Where exactly is the line between freedom of expression and the duty to honor one's oath of office? For Paul and his supporters, the answer was simple. A representative cannot favor another nation over America, even in rhetoric. He reminded the public of the sacrifices made by generations of Americans who fought, worked, and built the nation into what it is today. From veterans who served abroad to families who sustained their communities, their collective effort, he argued, should never be taken for granted. To Paul, dismissing America as irredeemable disregards those sacrifices. His message wasn't just about policy disagreements. It was about respect for those who built and defended the country. Critics said his tone was too severe, but supporters countered that he voiced what millions quietly feel. Frustration with elected officials who seem to criticize America while enjoying its freedoms. By taking that stand, Paul positioned himself as a spokesman for citizens who feel overlooked or silenced by political correctness. His appeal rested on one simple point. Perspective matters.
Simply send her anywhere. I'm willing to contribute to buy her a ticket to go visit Somalia. And I think she could look and maybe learn a little bit about the disaster that is Somalia. And then maybe after she's visited Somalia for a while, she might come back and appreciate America more.
All right, very good. I know Senator Paul loves freedom. He loves the Constitution. He loves this country. He also knows that the words that he chooses in terms of Somalia and Congresswoman Omar are going to be incendiary. Was this a smart battle for him to insert himself into?
I think it's worth drawing attention, actually, to her story, which is not just a story of an immigrant, but it's a story of a refugee who came to the United States, and by the way, Somalia being a country where a lot of Americans gave their lives trying to get food and trying to free it from tribal control and different gangs were running things. She comes over here to the freest country in the world, runs for Congress and wins and becomes a celebrity. And her response is to attack our freedoms, to even have attacked the soldiers who died in Somalia. That is a definition of ungrateful. And he's correct to say, I'm not trying to send her back, but maybe she should educate herself on what is actually going on in this world and the opportunities she'd had here to reflect on them.
Sometimes we do need a little context, though. I think sometimes we have it so easy that we take it for granted that we live in a place where there is mobility, where someone who has active disdain for the United States can get elected to represent constituents in the House of Representatives. That's pretty remarkable.
It is. I mean, America is unique and singular in its way that it enables, individuals, if they are, our citizens and rightful.
Paul urged Omar and those who share her views to compare America's freedoms with countries plagued by corruption, dictatorship, or civil war. He emphasized Somalia's decades-long struggles as a vivid reminder of what happens when liberty collapses. His intent, he said, was not to ignore America's problems, but to encourage appreciation for what works. The freedoms, opportunities, and stability that most nations can't offer. He pointed out the irony in Omar's position. Someone who rose to power through America's open system now speaks of it as unjust. That, Paul argued, is what makes the conversation about gratitude so important. He wasn't demanding blind patriotism. He was asking for fairness and acknowledgement of the nation's good alongside its flaws. This theme, gratitude versus grievance, became the heart of his remarks, and it resonated with audiences tired of hearing only criticism about their country. Yet, it also deepened the polarization. Omar supporters accused Paul of trying to silence dissent, while his defenders saw him as restoring balance to an increasingly one-sided conversation about America's values.
To rise through the ranks and represent their communities. And look, I've been critical of Representative Omar's remarks in regards to Israel and Jewish people and a whole host of other things. I'm not a huge fan of the squad. I think everybody that's involved in this conversation right now, might as well go back to the playground because they're all acting incredibly immature.
Yes.
But I want to pose a rhetorical question, though, because so often when we hear it's what do we expect from President Trump? If he gets hit, of course he's going to hit back. He's a counterpuncher. Yet, I obviously don't agree with her retweeting the Tom Arnold stuff. You could argue, hey, Rand Paul took a shot. She took a shot back. She's allowed to defend herself.
Yeah, but he's saying go get some context so you can appreciate freedom coming from a place that is lawless and brutal and unimaginable. What she is celebrating is the fact that he was feloniously
I am not agreeing
and
with
almost
either.
gravely injured.
It's terrible.
I mean,
And what happened to Rand Paul?
you have to realize there is a difference here between words that might be offensive and violent action.
Can I ask
You have to realize there's a difference.
a simple question as we kind of try to
This is more of a rhetorical thing than there was actual.
Sometimes rhetorical questions deserve answers.
I see the lawmakers kind of trying to out-nasty one another. Does he think she doesn't remember what it was like? Because I guarantee you she does.
That's a good point.
And
exactly.
I don't know where we're going here. Lisa?
Well, I will say two things that I find interesting. If you look at Representative Omar and you look at Rashida Tlaib, they both have tweets in 2012 and 2015 saying let's deport certain people, right? And particularly Tlaib talking about President Trump. So I find that interesting. Not a ton of coverage about those tweets that exist there either. But I think if you're looking at someone like Representative Omar and what President Trump, as I've said previously, is trying to do is paint the Democrat Party as extreme.
What unfolded between Paul and Omar wasn't just a political clash. It symbolized a larger struggle over America's identity. Both sides claimed patriotism, but their definitions were miles apart. Paul's strength came from his calm, analytical approach. Instead of personal attacks, he used comparisons, history, and lived experiences to make his case. He reminded listeners of the refugees he'd met, people who had suffered under oppressive regimes yet spoke gratefully of America's freedoms. By grounding his argument in such stories, he made his defense of the nation feel personal and real. That method gave Paul credibility in an era of division and emotional politics. His exchange with Omar reignited national conversations about loyalty, civic duty, and what it truly means to serve the American public with integrity.
With America. So if you want to do that, you pick these four women. Of course, you're making your case by doing that. And if you look at someone like Representative Omar, she is essentially an American success story, okay? Coming over here as a refugee, being educated, going on to become a member of Congress, that is part of the American dream. And I do think there's a sense of frustration because you hear some of these comments that she has previously made in minimalizing 9/11, which she absolutely did, saying it as some people did something, and making comments like that, supporting policies like a boycott, divestment, and sanctions, which Nancy Pelosi has said is bigoted and dangerous. So you look at the substance of some of these things like that Representative Omar has said, and I don't think President Trump is wrong to draw attention to the substance of that.
Well, look, you can't move the facts.
These members hold.
Again, I make the argument think that he's the catalyst to get everybody to talk about those remarks that she made. And I know the director of the JCRC for Dakotas and Minnesota sat down with her some time ago, Steve Honigs. It's been reported that he's had those conversations with her too, Representative Omar, trying to bring forward. My question is, we get back to the old send her back to which you think she came from when you say to go to Somalia, and I'm telling you that woman probably...
How old was she?
I'm sure she remembers, but what lessons has she learned?
Of course, but here's, and I know how people will contrast it. They will say, and there are people who have said, President Trump should go visit Baltimore. He should go visit Baltimore. He should talk to the citizens, and he should see what's really happening.
The debate ultimately raised one defining question. Should U.S. lawmakers ever speak in ways that appear to favor another nation's interests? Omar's critics said her words blurred that boundary and created uncertainty about where her priorities lay. Her supporters argued she was simply advocating for her community, a right every American holds. But for Rand Paul, the matter was clear. When you swear an oath to the Constitution, he said, America must always come first. Anything else undermines national unity and public trust. By the end, what began as a heated exchange had evolved into a larger reflection on the country's direction. Are we a nation defined by gratitude and loyalty, or by endless self-critique? Paul's remarks resonated with those who believe leaders should defend America's principles unapologetically. For his followers, this was not just another congressional clash. It was a reaffirmation of what patriotism should mean in the modern era.